Well, for some reason, God keeps getting me up at this time in the morning to do videos. That's a rush to catch the sun. The sun has just come out over the cloud seconds ago. This morning, today, I'm going to do a video. I'm going to talk about how Saudi Arabia is going to loot, steal the wealth of the West pension funds. Recently, an innocent looking, fat, jovial, "Hello, I am a nice Saudi prince," went on TV and announced that proof that Saudi Arabia is becoming a liberated economy and a liberated people and a forward-thinking people. Proof of this is they're going to sell the Saudi state oil industry. Oh, you're so kind, Saudi Arabia. But it's a scam. Because what it is Saudi Arabia, the princes need a lot of money. You're getting more princes every year. Princes breed princes. And all these princes have like 4 wives. They pour out the kids like God knows. Remember the Bin Laden family? 9/11, all the planes got grounded. But one plane was allowed to fly during the 9/11 crisis. And this was a private jet that was owned by the Bin Laden family. And it flew around America like a taxi, picking up the Bin Laden children. Osama Bin Laden has a father. And his father had about 20 odd kids to his different wives. And a lot of them were in America at the time. And within minutes of 9/11, it was like Bin Laden did it or whatever. The Bin Laden family organised this plane like a taxi to pick up all the children and fetch them back to the east, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, whatever. So you've got all these children in these families in Saudi Arabia, and they need money. They've got lots of money now, but they know there's a good chance of another financial crash, or there's not as much money to be made anymore because of the way the world's economy is. Anyway, I'm slowing down, I should really be getting to the point. So they're going to sell the state oil industry, and one of the main buyers of the state oil industries will be the West pension funds. France, Denmark, the UK, the USA, Canada. Pension funds have money that is just sat there. It's like a dead elephant. A pension fund is like a dead elephant. And the money's sat there and it's going out into different investments, and then supposedly profit comes back. Well, the problem with pension funds now is there's not as much profit for the buck that they put in. They don't get as many bucks back because all the weaknesses of capitalism are coming to the fore. And not just the weaknesses, but we now have theft on a grand scale. It's so big, it can't be comprehended. The amount of money that is being stolen in this world by the evil elite. Bernie Madoff was a prime example. And this pension fund money, they want it. They want part of this dead elephant. They've got like axes, they've got knives, and they're cutting away at the dead elephant of the pension funds. And they're stealing it, and they're putting it in their bank accounts. So what's going to happen is Saudi Arabia is going to organise the pension fund, the state oil industry to be sold, and it'll be organised by, we'll say, Goldman Sachs. Because that's what Goldman Sachs does. Goldman Sachs will like put a prospectus together. It'll put like it'll put videos, glossy videos, where it'll race around in helicopters, flying over oil refineries, flying over oil wells in Saudi Arabia, and it'll say, "This is all for sale. The Saudis they're letting us into their wealth. Come and buy, bargain." It's going to be it's going to be the biggest sale the world has ever seen. That's already known. So Goldman Sachs will have this job of convincing people to buy the Saudi state oil industry. They've got to convince the pension funds, and what they'll do is they'll fly them out in the jets and they'll park them up in Dubai in the big hotels where all the entertainment is. Throw in a few prostitutes, throw in a few bit of drugs, top champagne, top rooms, all free. So these people who run the pension funds will all be taken out to Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and they'll be parked up in the luxury hotels, and they'll be shown the prospectus, the videos, and they'll get all these little extras, like I say. They'll get goodie bags, just like the Oscars as well, a goodie bag to take home. They'll meet all the powerful Saudis and they'll be made to feel welcome, part of the family. Just like George Bush. I think it was one of the Saudis says, "Brother Bush." And he said like he was part of the family. It's actually on video, that. It's on YouTube, you can find it. So they'll be there, all these pension fund managers, and they'll say, "Alright then, I'll have a bit, I'll have a bit, I'll have a bit." But they're going to have to, it won't be a bit. To buy out the Saudi state oil industry, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to have to be spread about. Japanese pension funds, Japanese banks, everything. So it's going to be a big job. But Goldman Sachs can do it. Because they've got a track record of making shit look like gold. And remember that term, shit look like gold. Because Goldman Sachs did it to Greece. When Greece joined the euro, they had to prove that they had a viable economy. They had to prove they had an economy that worked, that made a profit, that wasn't going to be a drain on the euro. So to get rid of the drachma and to take on the euro, they had to convince the European Parliament that they followed all the rules of fiscal responsibility. And Goldman Sachs were given that job. And Goldman Sachs put together videos and pamphlets that proved that Greece was a viable economy. Well, it fucking wasn't, was it? Goldman Sachs made horse shit look like gold in relation to Greece. And we now see the consequences of that shit like gold. Eventually, somebody rubbed away and found shit. And Greece is now bust. But Goldman Sachs have walked away free. They deliberately lied. They deliberately lied in these videos and glossies. But nobody's going to get punished for that. So when we get the biggest pile of shit this world has ever seen, and it's turned into a big piece of gold, the consequences will be more dramatic than Greece. Because it'll be the pension funds of the elderly people of the West. USA, Canada, Denmark, France, Belgium, UK. It will be the old people of all these nations that are going to pay for this fucking piece of shit. The Saudi Arabians have a plan to bail out of the Middle East. All these princes are all going to be given a share of this money. And years ago, you had the, not the Rockefeller family, one of the banking families, the Rothschilds. The story goes that Baron Rothschild, had 3 children, and he gave them all a big lump of money and he sent them far and wide to establish banks, to establish a dynasty of wealth. And that's what they did. One went to London, one went to Paris, and one went to America, to New York. So Baron Rothschild in Switzerland with his bank gave them all money. He said, right, go and establish a bank in Paris, London and New York, and then we will become a superpower within the world of banks. And that's what they did. The Rothschilds are responsible for a lot of problems in this world. So these Saudi princes are all going to be given pots of gold, and they're going to be told to go out and establish an empire based on wealth, based on the money they've stolen. Why do we keep saying stolen? Well, it's going to prove in the future that the Saudi state oil industry is a pile of shit. It's got a limited life that we know of, because it's got the oil is not infinite. There's only a finite amount of oil, and it's been pumped out there for 30, 50, 60 years. It's been pumping away. And it's the Saudi figures that state how much oil is left. Well, who's going to believe the Saudis? One of the most treacherous bunch of fucking people on this planet. They're the bastards that are responsible for fucking what's happening in Syria. They are financing death on a massive scale in Syria. All the refugees. And that's all because Saudi Arabia, a sunny country, wants to dominate the Far East, the Middle East, and there's an unspoken war between Sunni and Shia, which nobody will talk about. There is a war on this planet between Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims, and it's been going on for centuries. But we're all part of that battle now. Saudi Arabia, all these refugees that are fleeing from Syria and Lebanon, it's all part of the Shia Sunni power struggle to control the word of Muhammad. Because they both have different versions of the Quran. One book, two versions, just the same as the Bible. One book, many versions. Even the Jews with the Old Testament and the Torah, they have different versions. There's no united view on religion of any of the main religions. And people all around this planet are being killed to make one word of one book. The Sunni wants to dominate the word. The Vatican wants to dominate the word. Israel, they've just gone, well, their time will come. So all these Saudi princes are going to get this money, and the West will be left with the state oil industry, which, as I just said, who's to say how much oil is beneath the ground? How can you trust the Saudi? How can you trust Goldman Sachs after what they did with Greece? If Goldman Sachs does the sale and then says there's 50 years of oil left underneath the sands of Saudi Arabia, how can anyone believe them after what they did with Greece? The lies he told. Look at the misery now in Greece. German banks are stealing what wealth there is of Greece now to pay off this debt because it's all gone wrong. They're bailing out Greece with money, Germans, and the German banks are stealing the state industries of Greece. They're taking them over at rock bottom prices. So you've got all that misery because of Goldman Sachs lying. Well, they're going to lie again, aren't they? But they're going to loot, they're going to take the piss twice, Saudi Arabia, because what they'll do is, you will not be able to find managers from all over the world to come and manage this state oil industry. You'll still have to use the people, the management that is in place now. And they're going to be paid a fortune. Plus they're going to steal, because it's part of the Arab tradition to take 10%. That's for me, that. Somebody comes in, they need a load of work doing. It's £50 million worth of work, $50 million worth of work has to be done on an oil refinery. So you get the manager who you have to go through to put your bid in for this £50 million worth of work that needs doing. You ought to put your bid in, you meet the manager, Saudi Arabian manager, and you go, right, there's my bid. And he goes, yeah, that's fine, that. Right, where's the extra for me? Well, I haven't priced for that. It's actually against the law in my country to do that. I'm not allowed to bribe officials. You won't get the contract then, will you? So then, extra will have to go on. In some way, it'll have to be overpriced so that this Saudi prince, who is now a manager of this oil refinery, can get his percentage. There was a case in the United Kingdom, British Aerospace sold jets, one of the biggest arms deals that Britain has ever done to Saudi Arabia, and £1 billion was paid in bribes to Saudi officials, and one of them was actually the ambassador to Washington. I forgot his name at the moment, it's on the tip of my tongue. He was paid $1 billion in bribes. It's just part of the character. It's how they increase the wealth. Because these princes have little princes. And these little princes want palaces. So this money is needed to give those princes palaces. And then their princes will want palaces. Plus they'll all want 4 wives as well. The maximum allowed. Plus they've got a lifestyle to keep up. They've got Rolls Royces that they need made in gold. They've got private jets, kitted out, luxury. They've all got to be paid for. So the pension funds of the West will own the Saudi oil industry, but they won't run it. It'll be run on behalf of them by the management that's in place now. And the profit will be negligible. But then one day the oil industry it'll crash. Because what's going to happen now is the Saudis, who were very proud of their armed forces because they had all the best equipment, they cannot be a ragtag army in the Yemen. Shias. So the magnificent, sunny Saudi Arabian armed forces cannot beat a ragtag army of Shia in Yemen. They can't do it. They're bombing them. They've got special forces in there. They've even got British special forces helping them, and they can't beat them. And you've got a huge Shia. When I say huge, quite a sizable portion of the Saudi people are Shia. You don't see them much. They're tucked away in slums. They don't get the best housing. They don't get the best healthcare. So you've got this resentful Shia population in Saudi Arabia. Eventually they're going to start bombing these oil refineries. But the Saudi Arabian army cannot look after these oil refineries because they can't beat this ragtag army in the Yemen. They can't dominate them. So you're going to have a situation where you're going to have terrorism rampant in Saudi Arabia. And that oil industry has got to be protected. Well, who's going to pay for it? The Saudi Arabians will go, we don't own this oil industry anymore. Why should we protect it? Why should we pay to protect something that we do not own? It's your problem. So the West is somehow going to have to protect the oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. But they've got to get permission to put troops in there, or mercenaries. Because a lot of the protection is done by mercenaries now, private armies. Capitalism, making a profit. And their profit is a drain on the pension funds who will own the state oil industry. the Saudi oil industry. Everyone's profit is a loss for the pension funds that will own the state oil industry of Saudi Arabia. But an agreement will be reached whereby the Saudi Arabian government will be recompensed for using their army, and you'll have all the mercenaries there as well, protecting the oil industry. But it won't work because it's too big, it's too open. Plus also it pays to let a few bombers in. So then you can increase your mercenaries, then you can increase the protection racket. It's basically a protection racket, the Saudi Arabian army protecting the oil industry, which they will not own anymore. It's a protection racket. It's what the Mafia do. They go into a bar and they say, you need some protection. And the owner goes, I've never had any trouble here before. He said, why would I need protection? Why do we need insurance? Next thing you know, a fight starts in the corner and the Mafia bloke goes, that's why. And he walks over and goes, stop. And they stop. And then he basically tells him that'll be happening every night unless you start paying us. So you've got to pay. So eventually you'll have to pay the Saudi Arabians to protect the oil industry. And it'll all come from the profit, the top line, what the pension funds will need for their profit to top up the pension funds. That's why I call a pension fund a dead elephant. It needs to make money elsewhere. It doesn't own anything, but it needs to make a profit off everywhere it invests. Well, the Saudi Arabian, the minute they put money into the Saudi Arabian oil industry, they're on the loser. It's dead money. I'm going to go to something now. So, you either believe me or you don't believe me on Saudi Arabia and pension funds. But I'm going to give you an example now of when your pension funds were looted in the past. And people might go, oh dear, he's talking conspiracy theory here he goes. But just listen to this. 9/11. The World Trade Center was not 2 buildings. It was not just 2 towers. It was 7. It was 7 buildings. And when the towers came down, they damaged all the little buildings around, and they also damaged the Hyatt Hotel. Now the insurance companies paid out on these. That money that the insurance company paid out lowered their profit. So then that lowered the payout to any investors. Well, the pension funds are the big investors in insurance companies. Pension funds invest in insurance companies. Pension funds invest in so many things, it's unbelievable. Now here's where the pension funds were looted. When the people who ran the World Trade Center buildings put in a claim, they actually put 2 claims in. Now when you crash your car, you put 1 claim in, 1 car, 1 claim. But the people who ran the consortium, who ran the World Trade Centers, said it was 2 claims because there was 2 planes, therefore there was 2 attacks. And we were insured against terror attacks. Well, if there's 2 attacks, we should get 2 payments. And they actually went to court to try and get 2 payments. Eventually it was like, no, you're not getting 2, but they got 1 big payout. They only got 1 payout, but it was massive. Now they'd only owned the towers, or they'd leased them, for 6 months. And they took on the lease based on the fact that they were going to take all the asbestos out of the buildings. Because all the steel in all the buildings, all 7 buildings, was lined with asbestos. And the Port Authority who owned the towers couldn't afford to take the asbestos out. So they put the World Trade Center up and said, anyone who wants to lease these buildings, will give you a good rate but you've got to take all the asbestos out. And the cost of taking the asbestos out of the 2 towers alone was $1 billion, over $1 billion. So this consortium took that on. So they've got like cheap rent for 90 years. They're leasing these towers, all these buildings for 90 years, and they're going to take the steel, they're going to take all the asbestos out, and they're going to pay $1 billion. So within a week of signing the contracts, they insured these buildings against terrorism. Never been insured against terrorism before. And lo and behold, terrorist attack. Towers come down, all the other buildings are damaged, but there's one building that still stood. That was World Trade Center Building 7. Now I wrote a book. I was maybe the first person on this planet to put in writing in a book that there was going to be a financial crash. And I said banks were going to crash, value of homes was going to drop, and I was right. But in this book I also wrote about the insurance scam of World Trade Center Building number 7, which would expose the scam of the whole World Trade Center, the Twin Towers. And in my book I said everybody should forget about Twin Towers. Just take it out of your mind, because it's too emotional. People who saw that coming down on the day, people who've seen it on film, it's registered in the brain, so you've got to like push that to the side. And I actually said that the big investors, the pension funds and other big investors in the insurance companies should have took the insurance companies to court for paying out the insurance claim on the World Trade Center, the whole complex. They should have took them to court and said, why did you pay that? And then the insurance companies will have gone, well, the planes hit the towers fell down, all this damage was done, we're liable for it because we're the insurance companies. Well, they should have been taken to court, and somebody should have said to these insurance companies, why did you pay that insurance money when World Trade Center Building 7 was clearly demolished? It never fell down, it was demolished. And to demolish a building of that size would take months of planning. And there's also the fact nobody has ever come forward and said, oh yeah, I've demolished that building, yeah, I was told to demolish it. Well, who told you to demolish it? Where did you get your explosives from? How did you get that building down within 6 hours of the towers coming down, when we know that the planning takes a year, and to actually organise the planning of the explosives to demolish it takes months? And if you go on YouTube and put Starlight Hotel Las Vegas demolished, you will see the Starlight Hotel come down in exactly the same manner, 100% the same way as World Trade Center Building 7. The building collapses inwards. All the walls come in, 4 walls, 4 sides, all come in together and all drop on the spot. So you've just got one neat pile of rubble. And that's what happened with World Trade Center Building 7. So forget about the towers. The insurance companies should never have paid out a penny until somebody explained how World Trade Center Building 7 come down. Because when you put an insurance claim in, you've got to provide proof. An insurance claim will be examined by the insurance assessor, and he'll read it and he'll go, that doesn't look right. So what he'll do is he'll write a letter to the people and say, excuse me, but can you clarify this fact? And once you've clarified this fact, we will then pay you out. And what the people who insured the Trade Centre for should have done, they should have wrote to this consortium, this dodgy consortium, who had just saved themselves $1 billion because they don't have to take the asbestos out now. It's been done. It's in the air. People were breathing it. People are dying of cancer now, first responders, they're dying by the shipload. But they're all spread about because they breathe the asbestos in. That's why President Bush won't go to New York for 4 days. Had to wait for the dust to settle. That's why that saying, that old saying, is a true saying. Got to wait for the dust to settle. You have to wait for the dust to settle, because if you don't and you go in, you're breathing that dust. There's no way President Bush was going to breathe in that asbestos. But all the first responders were. People in the New York area were. Nobody was evacuated. They were all breathing asbestos. And the consortium saved $1 billion by not having to take that asbestos out. And that's only, when they say $1 billion, it'd have been more. So the insurance assessor, when this consortium put the claim in, he went, right, we want our $1.5 billion now to rebuild the towers. We want our insurance claim. He should have gone, yeah, I'll gladly pay that money. But first, can you explain to me how World Trade Center Building 7 fell down? I can understand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I just do not understand how 7 came down. Because I've looked at film of it and it was demolished, in my estimation. Because I've also looked at video of the Starlight Hotel, and the 2 buildings came down in exactly the same manner. I've spoken to people in the industry that brings down buildings, and they've all said to me, World Trade Center Building 7 was demolished. It never fell down. 1 and 2 fell down. 3, 4, 5 and 6 were badly damaged by 1 and 2 coming down. Number 7 received slight damage. But we all know that Building 7 had extra reinforcing in, because a lot of federal agencies were in there. The FBI were in there. The FBI had a lot of evidence against the people who defrauded Enron. That evidence was lost. That was a shame. All these government agencies were in there, and they required extra reinforcement. So that was a stronger building than all the other buildings. Yet it clearly was demolished. So can you please explain to me why I should pay out? But that was never done. So the insurance claim was paid at a cost to pension funds who invested in the insurance companies. Pension funds were the big losers on 9/11. Everything that was insured came out of pension fund money. In my book, I said there was going to be a financial crash. I said that World Trade Center Building number 7 was demolished. Therefore, we cannot believe anything else around all the other buildings. We can't believe a word that's said about the planes. Bearing in mind that most of the people who were supposedly hijackers on those planes that day were Saudi Arabians. Well, we just talked about the deceitfulness of Saudi Arabians. So they had Saudi passports, they were Saudis. The hijackers, supposed hijackers, were Saudis. The Saudi Arabians aren't responsible for all the evil in this world. But my book, I've said it in all my videos, I've said it in my book, there is an evil elite. And this evil elite is everywhere. It's in every religion. The business of evil is everywhere.